game. I don't think I've ever done this before. Perhaps I have. Certainly made stuff that resembles it. And if you're not familiar with the snake game, pause this video, Google it, play it. I think you'll find it. Okay, so let's just get started. We don't have time. I kind of want to like spend some time getting to know you, but I can't because I only have 14 minutes and 30 seconds right now. So the first thing that I want to do is, and I'm using a JavaScript framework called P5.js, and P5.js requires a setup function and a draw function. And the first thing I'm going to do is just make a canvas that is, I don't know, 600 by 600 pixels. And we're going to go over here to look at this page. There we go. There's a canvas there. It's empty. Boy, I got to move faster than this. And now we're going to give it a background. I just want to make sure things are up and running. That's good. So I've got a canvas. You know, maybe I need to move this over. It's kind of under the timer, but whatever. You get the point. There's the canvas. My timer's in the way. Okay, that's fine. It'll get better next time. So let's see what do we want to do here. So I'm going to do this with some object-oriented programming, and I'm going to write something called a constructor function. I have some tutorials about constructor functions if you don't know what that is. And what I'm going to do is make an object that has an x and a y. And I'm also going to keep track of an x speed and a y speed because what I want, and let's just make this 1, what I want is for this snake object to have some functions, like an update function. And what happens in that update function is that x value simply changes by the x speed value, and the y value simply changes by the y speed value. Now, I want another function. I'm going to call it show, because what I want is for, I want to draw, I know, I'm going to draw a rectangle. A rectangle at this dot x, this dot y, that's, I don't know, 10 by 10, and I'm going to make that rectangle white. So the point of this is I want to have this simple object. It's a snake object. It has an x and a y, an x speed and a y speed. It's going to move around the window. And its x and y move based on that x and y speed. So at the beginning of the program, I can create a variable. I'm just going to name it s. Maybe I would want to name it snake in a sort of more normal day of my life. But this is a little bit of a rushed little project here, so I'm going to just call it var s. And I'm going to say s is a new snake. And then I'm going to say s.update and s.show. And I might want to move this snake object to another file, JavaScript file at some point, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. So I'm sure we got some stuff wrong. But we can say, hey, look, there it is. There's my snake. It's moving across the window. Hi, snake. Go, come back. No, go away. Okay, whatever. Okay, so now, so that's pretty good. Okay. What happens in the snake game? I think if you press the up arrow, it goes up. If you press the down arrow, it goes down, left arrow. So we can add something in P5. We can add a function that's just sort of like a global event called keyPressed. And I can say, I think if key equals up arrow, oh boy, I hope that's right. Oh, key code. I think with these, you want to check a built-in variable in P5 called key code. Then I want to say to my snake, I'm going to set a direction, like move up 0 along the x-axis, but -1 is up. So you can see kind of this idea that I'm doing here, which is, boy, I hope these are right, which is this idea that the snake is going to have a new function that's going to allow me to set its direction. And if I press up, I want to set its direction to 0, -1, down, 0, 1, and then I also want to do right and left. So let me quickly copy and paste this 2 more times, and I need a right arrow and a left arrow. And if it's moving to the right, its x is 1 and its y is 0. If it's moving to the left, its x is -1 and its y is 0. So of course, this isn't going to work now. We can run this, and I can start hitting keys, but it's going to say s.dir is not a function. So I made up this idea of a function called dir for direction, but I need to actually add it to my object. And you know let's be ambitious here. Let's take this object and let's make this is a little bit dangerous what I'm doing here. Let's make a separate file. I'm going to call it snake.js. I'm going to paste it back in there, and in my index.html, I am also going to add a reference to snake.js. This just allows me to organize my code a little bit differently, so I can have sketch.js, which just has setup, draw, and keep rest, and I can have snake.js, which is just the snake object. Oh, my timer thing is in the way of my code a little bit. I got to work on this bar. Okay, that's a little bit better. So you can see this is all the code, the constructor function for making this kind of object. But what was the point of doing that? I need to add another function called this.dir. And the point of that function was to receive two values, an x and a y, and to use those two values to actually set this object's direction. So now, if I receive an x and a y, that's what the x speed and y speed become. And if I go back to sketch.js, I can see here, there we go. That's what I'm doing here. Okay, I got worried that my audio stopped working or something, but it seems to still be working. I do feel like I'm a little bit loud today. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. I shouldn't be doing this live in the middle of the video, but whatever. Okay, so now if I do this, we should see press down, press to the right, press down, press to the left. You can see, now let's do something here, and let's think about this for a second. We want the snake, one thing we need to think about here, and there's a lot of different ways we could implement this, but the canvas, you would really want to think of it as a grid, because the snake is actually going to be a large rectangle, and as it moves, it's going to move to the next spot in the grid, the next spot, it moves down the next spot. So I want some sort of variable to keep track of the size of this grid. I don't know what to call it. I could call it R. Call it R. Let's just call it R. Let's call it SCL to stand for scale. I don't want to call it scale because scale is a built-in function in P5. So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to add a variable. I'm going to call it SCL for scale, and I'm going to make it 20. And then actually that's that could be that's a global variable. And in the snake, I want to have everything based on that. So I want to move by the x speed. Really just the x speed and y speed is really just the direction, and then I want to draw the snake at that scale. And now, if we go back to the browser, and I hit refresh, whoa, it's so fast, right? So, a couple things. Let's just add some code really briefly to constrain it. This.x equals, the P5 has a function called constrain, where I can say, hey, take this value, like x, and constrain it between 0 and the width. And you know what? The width minus scale, because I don't want it to actually go off. It's a rectangle drawn from the top left. And this.y, I want to constrain it from this.y to the height minus scale. How are we doing? We got 7 minutes left. We're getting somewhere. Okay, so now we can see that this is kind of working. This is ultimately going to be my snake now. I might not like what I'm about to do next in most cases, but I think it's going to be fine for me to just really reduce the frame rate, because the snake game is kind of this like low-res throwback thing. It's just going to... So I'm just going to globally in P5, in my setup, I'm just going to say like frame rate, and I'm just going to say 10, and now I'm going to refresh it again, and you can see this looks sort of like what the snake game might be. Okay, so we've got that. I can now press arrow keys and move it around. What are the things that are missing now? The snake game, random bits of food appear. When a bit of food appears, the snake tries to eat that food. When the snake eats that food, it gets a little bit longer. And if the snake ever runs into itself, it dies. Oh boy, that's a lot of stuff to do in 6 minutes. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is let's add a piece of food. So I want to, oh boy, this is, fine, it's fine. Let's just do it. No problem. Let's, I kind of want to make a food object, but we don't have a lot of time. Maybe I'll refactor that in later. Let's just make a, let's make it a vector. So I'm going to use create vector, which is a quick and easy way to store both an x and a y. Of course, I didn't use the vector in the snake, but whatever, it's fine. We can be a little messy for fun today. Create vector, and I'm going to give it a random spot in the window, and I'm going to, in draw, I'm going to make my food a nice like purple or pink color. I'm going to draw foo.x, foo.y, and I'm going to make it the same size. And now we can run it. We can see, oh, there's my food. I want to come and get my food. Now, it's not exactly on the grid, so I should probably deal. Let's make this correct. So what I actually want to do in terms of its location is I'm going to make a function that called pick location. And what that function is going to do is, first we need to know what are the number of columns. So it's the width of the window, divided by that scale. And then the number of rows, which is the height of the window divided by scale. And then now I want to create a piece of food that is a random column and a random row. And I also want to use floor with both of these. Oh boy. You know, this is getting to be a very long line of code here. But so what did I just do? I wrote a function that picks a location because I want it to be only one of these spots in the grid. So I have to divide. This is spot 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2. So I need to divide by how big that scale is by the width to pick one of those integers. And then I actually need its actual location. I want to multiply it by that scale to expand it back out. So, and the floor function is everywhere just because I need these things to be whole numbers for this to work well. So now you can see this should, the food, well, that didn't seem to work. Are we sure? Are we sure I did that correctly? Oh, that's right. It's a little bit off. Maybe I'm not going to worry about that right now. Somebody will correct this later. It's close enough. I'll fix that later because I only have 4 minutes left. So what I want to do now is figure out, I want to write a function s.eatTheFood. I want to do something. I expanded myself by 5 minutes today. Clearly that's not enough time. I want the snake to eat the food. So in the snake object, I need to add another function called eat. Technical difficulties, but I'm back. And what I'm doing right now is I'm writing the function where the snake eats the food. So we need to check if the snake is at the same location of the food. And while I was having technical difficulties, I realized I'm missing something important, which is we have this whole pick location function, but I didn't actually call it up here. I need the food's location to be at this thing that I spent all this time doing to make sure it's on the grid. So now that should solve that problem where the food is perfectly aligned on the grid with the snake. But let's go back to where we were, snake.eatLocation. So in the snake object, this means I need to write a function called eat. And this function is going to receive a position, a vector for where that food is. And I could check if they're in exactly the same space, but I'm pretty sure that if I just use the distance between like where the snake actually is, x and y, to the where the food is, x and y, and if I just check if that distance is less than like 1 pixel, I should probably check 2 pixels or 3 pixels, but whatever, I'm going to say return true. In other words, I want this function to tell me whether or not the snake reached the food. And if it's true, what do I want to do with this information? So I want to come back here, and I want to say, oops, if the snake eats the food, then I want to what? Pick a new location. Oh, you know what? I realized it's not food does not equal pick location. This function I wrote just sets the location for that food itself. So I could just call pick location again. It's not returning anything. Boy, my mind is getting fuzzy toward the end of these videos. There's only 2 minutes left, but let's see. I think we're going to be really close now. So now we should see, I'm going to move. Come on, be on the grid. Look at that. It's right on the grid. And I can eat that piece of food, and it'll go somewhere new. Oh, this is fun to play. I don't have time to play this right now. I got to keep moving. Okay, so what do I need to do? If it gets the food, it needs to become longer. How do I keep track of a snake that has a length to it? Well, I need some sort of array, some sort of variable to keep track of how long is that snake. So let's go back to the code. We got to go back to the snake object, and let's add something called this.total. And that equals 1, because the snake, and you know what? I'm going to do something a little bit goofy, which is that I'm going to keep the x and the y is the current location, and the array that I'm going to store, the length of that array is just its history. So at first it's 0, because it only has its current location and the rest of it. This is actually going to be useful later, I just realized. And I'm going to make another variable called tail, which is going to be an array. So one thing for sure is, if it eats the food, total should go up by 1. So total should go up by 1. Now, as it moves, I want to have a loop. What goes in this loop? Well, I definitely want to loop through that total. And actually, I want to do all of this right before it moves. Oh boy, I kind of need to work this out. I only have 38 seconds, but I need to work this out a little bit in my head here. So if this is the array, and this is the snake's current location, maybe what I want is to put its current location in the last spot and shift everything down, the history down. So this is where it was 4 moments ago, 3 moments ago, 2 moments ago, 1 moment ago. That'll do. So the first thing I need to do in this array is shift all the spots. So I really actually want to loop through total -1, and I want to say tail index I equals tail index I plus 1. That's going to do... I'm sure my time has expired now. We're going to see how long this takes. I'm going to just click a little window here. I'm going to hit OK. It stops at 1 second. And it's going to say time expired. And you know what? Yeah, no, let's leave that there. We'll see. Well, you'll see how long this video is, and that's how long it took. OK, so this is going to shift everything over by 1. And then when I'm done, I want the very last spot, which is tail total -1, to equal create vector this dot x, this dot y. So this now allows that to current location, and then it can move. And so now, when I'm drawing it, in addition to drawing the rectangle at its current location, I need to also say, draw its tail. So I want a rectangle at tail index I. Oh, and I realized I've made a classic JavaScript error. Classic JavaScript error. I've got this thing called tail, which is really important, but it's this dot tail. Tail is part of the snake. So everywhere I put tail, I forgot this dot tail. This happens to me all the time. This is like the bane of my existence. And this dot total also. Oh boy. So I think I'm looking around this dot tail, this dot tail, this dot tail, this dot total, this dot total. I should just have a big blinking sign in front of me that just says this dot, this dot, this dot. Okay, let's run this and see if this works now. Hit refresh. I don't know, I'm sure I missed something. And come on, eat that food. Total is not defined on line 12. So there's a place that I forgot it. Line 12, this dot total plus plus. Let's hope we didn't miss. Okay, I'm trying to look at the camera to make eye contact with you. And oh, look at that. The snake is, cannot read property X of undefined, snake.js42. Okay, it extended by 1, but how come when it extended by 2 it didn't work? Line 42, line 42. This seems totally reasonable to me. So what happened? This show is always happening. Okay, let's think about what order all this stuff is happening. Maybe that's the issue. Oh boy, I'm really gonna, this is bad. Okay, it's fine. This video is gonna be a little bit long because I'm gonna debug this now. Back again, a little bit of splicing and dicing here, but I'm going from where I want to add bits. I want to add the tail of the snake. So when the snake eats the food, the total goes up. Total is keeping track of how many bits of history of the snake's length do we have left. So I know what I want to do is anytime this dot total does not, okay, one thing I need to do is I always need to shift, and I actually have a diagram. I'm going to just add this in here. Okay, what I need to do here is I always need to shift the tail down. I need to shift everything down in the history. So I'm going to say this dot tail index I equals this dot tail index I plus 1. This is going to shift the spots down as the snake moves. All of its spots shift down so I can get the new spot in the end of the array, right? Because what I want is to then say this dot tail index total -1 equals the new location. So I have this array that always shifts down, and I have this array that always shifts everything back, and then the new spot goes in the end. So let me explain to you what I mean. I actually have this diagram from my technical difficulty part, but I'm over here now. Oops. Boy, everything is falling apart today. Come on over here, button. So in other words, I have this array. Let's just imagine for a second that this is the history of where the snake has been. So the new location is going to go in the end, and all the other spots will shift down, and the oldest location will be deleted. So this is what I'm doing here. Now, if, however, the snake has eaten a piece of food, it should actually get bigger, and the new location should go over here. So if you think about this, what I'm saying is there's two different possibilities. If this.total equals this.tail.length, meaning no food has been eaten, so the total is the same as the existing array length, then just shift everything over and give me my last spot. Otherwise, only put the new spot in and I don't need to shift. So in that sense, this can go over here. So the shifting, this is a small, tiny nuance, but the shifting only happens if we haven't eaten any food, because the new spot has to go in here, everything has to get shifted over. If we've eaten food, we just add a new spot on. And now, oops, I'm tripping over like, now we should be able to run this and see, but you know what? I need to add to draw. I need to also